going to work out? What if the medical report isn't good? What if my finances don't get better? What if my child doesn't get accepted in that school? We tried to figure it out. We've done our best, but we don't see anything changing. If we're not careful, we'll live worried, discouraged, not expecting it to get better. But there's a simple phrase you have to keep down in your spirit. God's got this. He's on the throne. He sees what's happening. He already has the solution. You don't have to figure it out. There may not be a logical answer. In the natural, you don't see a way. That's okay. We serve a supernatural God. He has ways to do it we've never thought of. Instead of trying to force it to happen, living uptight, you have to let go and let God. When you turn it over to Him and say, God, I know you've got this. I know you're in control. Not only will you feel the heaviness, the weight lift off of you, but God will make things happen that you couldn't make happen. And some of the things that are frustrating you now, causing you to lose sleep, that would all change if you would have this new perspective that God's got this. Sometimes we're trying to play God. We're trying to make our boss promote us, make ourselves get well, and make the contract go through. But as long as we're trying to force it, living frustrated, worried, then God steps back. But when you take your hands off and say, God, I know you've got this. I'm not going to worry about my finances. I'm not going to live uptight because of the medical report. I'm not going to be frustrated because I haven't met the right person. God, I trust your timing and I trust your ways. My life is in your hands. God never promised that we wouldn't have difficulties, but He did promise He would give us strength for every battle. He would take what was meant for harm and use to our advantage. You may have a good reason to worry about something. In your health, your finances, a dream. You've done everything you can. Doesn't look like it's going to work out. Stay in faith. God is saying, I've got this. I'm working behind the scenes. I'm in the process of turning it around. It's just a matter of time before you see things change in your favor. Now, live out of a place of peace, a place of trust. It may not happen the way you thought, but God's ways are better than our ways. God knows what's best for you. He's got this. In the scripture, a young man named Daniel worked for King Darius. The king loved Daniel. Daniel was so good at what he did, the king was going to put Daniel in charge of his whole empire. But when the other leaders heard this, they were jealous. They came up with a plan to get rid of Daniel. When you excel, when your gifts come out in great ways, don't be surprised if people get jealous. Everyone is not going to celebrate you. Some people will try to find fault and hold you back. The good news is people don't determine your destiny. God does. Keep being your best and let God fight your battles. Don't get distracted trying to prove to them who you are. God will be your vindicator. God will take care of your enemies. And these people that were against Daniel tried to manipulate the king. They said, King, you're so great. We've written a decree that for the next 30 days, no one can pray to anyone except you. If they do, they'll be thrown into a lion's den. They did this because they knew Daniel prayed to Jehovah. They convinced the king to sign this decree, but that didn't Daniel. 3 times a day, just like normal, he knelt down on his knees, opened his windows, and prayed to the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob. They ran back and told the king, this guy Daniel, one of the captives from the tribe of Judah, is defying your order. The king was upset with himself. He knew they had manipulated him, but he couldn't go back on his word, so he had Daniel sent to the lion's den. What's interesting is that whole night the king fasted for Daniel. When you're in difficult situations, God has people praying for you that you don't know anything about. This king was supposed to be his enemy, but he was actually believing for Daniel's safety. When they arrested Daniel and took him to the lion's den, he wasn't afraid, worried, panicked. He understood this principle. A little earlier, Daniel had seen his friends, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the Hebrew teenagers, get thrown into a fiery furnace and come out without the smell of smoke. Daniel's attitude was, God's got this. I'm in the palm of his hand. Nothing can snatch me away. If it's not my time to go, I'm not going to go. He stayed in peace. The Apostle Paul said, for me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. He was saying, in effect, if I live, I'm going to give God praise. And if I don't live, I'm going to give God praise. Either way, I'm going to stay in faith, knowing that God's got this. What you're facing may be bigger, stronger, more powerful. But when you refuse to worry, when you refuse to live stressed out, instead you stay in peace, thanking God that he's fighting your battles, knowing that he's in control, you are showing God by your actions that you're trusting him. One evening, the authorities threw Daniel into the lion's den. They expected him to be eaten in a few minutes. These were hungry lions. That's the way it always happened. But God supernaturally closed the mouths of the lions. For some reason, they thought, I'm not hungry tonight. I don't feel like eating. One said, yeah, I'm full too. I've got indigestion. I'm going to bed. God made Daniel unappetizing to those lions. Have you ever sat down to eat, but when you look at the food, you think, I'm not hungry for this? I used to love tuna sandwiches. I would eat one every night. A few years after we were married, I had a virus for a day or so, and I was just getting over it. Victoria, being nice, brought me a tuna sandwich. When I smelled that tuna, I almost threw up. And I thought, that is the worst smelling food in all the world, yet I would eat one every day. I can imagine when these lions looked at Daniel, they were confused, thinking, we should eat this man. We like a good steak dinner, but something is different tonight. We don't have our normal appetite. God knows how to make you unappetizing to the enemy. What should normally take you out, what should normally defeat you, for some reason, it can't harm you, it can't stop your business, it can't take your health. There is a bloodline God has put around you and your family. God controls the universe. He controls the lions. He controls the enemies. You're not at the mercy of random events, people wanting to do you wrong, bad breaks. God has a hedge of protection around you. Nothing can happen without his permission. We don't have to live worried, uptight. We're in a controlled environment. When the Hebrew teenagers were about to be thrown into the fiery furnace because they wouldn't bow down to the king's golden idol, they said, we know our God will deliver us, but even if he doesn't, we're still not going to bow down. They weren't panicked. They weren't upset, bitter. They knew they were in a controlled environment. They were saying like Paul, if we live, we're going to give God praise. If we don't live, we're going to go to heaven and still give God praise. They stayed in faith, knowing that God has the final say. And yes, at some point we're all going to die, but I've made up my mind, I'm going to die in faith. I'm going to die believing, expecting, trusting, praising, smiling, with a good attitude, knowing that God is in complete control. Nothing can snatch you out of his hands. The number of your days, he will fulfill. In life and in death, we have to know God's got this. In the lion's den that night, Daniel wasn't uptight, on edge, thinking I've made it this far, but any moment these lions could turn on me. Animals can sense when you're afraid. They know when you're scared of them. But when you're calm, you have your shoulders back, you're confident, they know